What happens when a beloved daytime television host decides she's had enough of royal excuses and celebrity victimhood? You won't believe what unfolds when Joy Behar goes head-to-head with Prince Harry in what can only be described as one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. The gloves came off, the truth came out, and by the end of it all, one of them was storming off set in absolute fury. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash in ways nobody saw coming. Last night's episode of The View started innocently enough, with Prince Harry appearing via satellite from his Montecito mansion to discuss his latest charitable endeavors and upcoming memoir updates. The Duke of Sussex, dressed in his typical casual button-down shirt, seemed relaxed as he exchanged pleasantries with the panel. But Joy Behar, seated at her usual spot, had something entirely different brewing behind those knowing eyes. The initial questions were standard fare, softball inquiries about his children, his life in California, and his ongoing philanthropic work with veterans. Harry answered with his practiced charm, that familiar boyish smile playing across his features as he spoke about finding peace and living authentically. The other co-host nodded approvingly, clearly enchanted by his polished responses about mental health awareness and environmental conservation. But Joy Behar wasn't buying it. Not for a second. "That's all very noble, Harry," Joy interrupted, her voice carrying that sharp edge viewers know all too well. "But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. You've made millions trashing your own family while simultaneously claiming you want privacy. How exactly does that work?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. Harry's smile faltered for just a moment before he attempted to deflect with his usual talking points about speaking his truth and breaking cycles of pain. But Joy wasn't having any of it. "Oh, spare me the therapy speak," she shot back, leaning forward in her chair with the intensity of a prosecutor closing in on a guilty defendant. "You've been dining out on family drama for years now. Book deals, Netflix specials, Oprah interviews. It's like you've turned your personal grievances into a cottage industry." The tension in the studio became palpable. The other co-hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly caught off guard by Joy's direct assault. This wasn't the gentle, supportive interview they'd all been expecting. Harry's jaw tightened visibly, his hands clasping together as he struggled to maintain his composure. "Joy, with respect, I think you're mischaracterizing my situation," Harry replied, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "I've never wanted to hurt my family. Everything I've shared has been in service of healing and helping others who might be going through similar struggles." "Bullshit." Joy fired back without missing a beat, her Brooklyn accent cutting through his polished English pronunciation like a knife. "You want to help people? Start by taking some responsibility for your own actions instead of constantly playing the victim card." The word bullshit seemed to echo through the studio. Harry's face flushed red, his carefully maintained public persona beginning to crack under Joy's relentless pressure. The satellite connection seemed to crackle with tension as viewers could practically feel the anger radiating through their screens. "I beg your pardon?" Harry said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I think you're being incredibly unfair and, frankly, quite rude." Joy laughed, that harsh, incredulous laugh that had become her signature when dealing with celebrity nonsense. "Rude? You want to talk about rude? How about airing your family's dirty laundry on international television for profit? How about claiming your father cut you off financially while you're sitting in a $40 million mansion?" The other co-hosts tried desperately to steer the conversation back to safer territory, but Joy was just getting started. She'd clearly done her homework, and she was armed with facts that Harry wasn't prepared to defend against. "You know what really gets me?" Joy continued, her voice rising with each word. "You left the royal family claiming you wanted a normal life, but then you've spent every moment since then reminding everyone that you're a prince. Which is it, Harry? Are you a private citizen, or are you royalty? Because you can't have it both ways." Harry's composure was rapidly deteriorating. His hands were now clenched into fists, and his usual diplomatic demeanor was being replaced by something much more raw and angry. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "You have no idea what it's like to grow up in that environment, to lose your mother the way I did, to be constantly scrutinized and criticized for every single thing you do. "Oh, here we go with the dead mother card again," Joy said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Look, I'm sorry about your mother, truly I am. But millions of people lose their parents, and they don't spend the next 25 years making it everyone else's problem." The studio fell dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to pause, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Harry's face had gone from red to white, his eyes blazing with a fury that the public had never seen before. But Joy wasn't finished. She sensed blood in the water, and like the seasoned television predator she was, she moved in for the kill. What came next would change everything, setting the stage for a confrontation that would make television history and leave one of them walking away in absolute disgrace. "And let's talk about your wife while we're being honest here," Joy continued, her voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. "Megan walked into that family knowing exactly what she was getting into, and then acted shocked when it wasn't all tiaras and tea parties. You both played the racism card when things got tough, but conveniently left out all the millions of dollars and opportunities that came your way." Harry's face contorted with rage, his royal training completely abandoned as he leaned toward the camera. "Don't you dare bring my wife into this," he snarled, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "You have absolutely no right to speak about her that way." "Oh, I have every right," Joy shot back, her Brooklyn attitude on full display. "She's a public figure who's made millions selling her victim story just like you have. And frankly, I'm tired of watching two privileged, wealthy people act like they're the most oppressed individuals on the planet." The other co-hosts looked like deer in headlights, completely unprepared for the nuclear explosion happening right in front of them. Whoopi tried to interject with a weak attempt at diplomacy, but Joy waved her off with an impatient gesture, clearly not finished with her assault. "You want to know what's really disgusting?" Joy pressed on, her voice rising to match Harry's anger. "You sat there with Oprah and implied your family was racist, destroying your grandmother's reputation in her final years, all while she was dealing with your grandfather's death and her own health issues. That wasn't courage, Harry. That was cruelty." Harry was now visibly trembling with rage, his carefully constructed public image crumbling in real time. "You're a fucking disgrace," he spat, the profanity shocking everyone in the studio. "You sit there in your comfortable little bubble, judging people you've never met, situations you could never understand." "There it is," Joy exclaimed, pointing at the screen with triumph in her eyes. "The real Prince Harry, everybody. Not the polished, media-trained victim we usually see, but an entitled brat who can't handle being called out on his bullshit." The tension was now so thick it was suffocating. Harry was breathing heavily, his hands shaking as he struggled to regain some semblance of composure. But Joy had clearly struck a nerve that went deeper than anything he'd experienced in his carefully orchestrated media appearances. "You know what your problem is, Harry?" Joy continued, her voice taking on an almost maternal scolding tone that somehow made her words even more devastating. "You've been coddled your entire life. Everyone's been telling you how special and important you are, how traumatic your experiences have been, but you've never had to face any real consequences for your actions." "Shut up," Harry whispered, his voice barely audible but loaded with venom. "Just shut the hell up." "I will not shut up," Joy fired back immediately. "Because someone needs to tell you the truth. You're a 40-year-old man who's still blaming everyone else for your problems. Your father, your stepmother, your brother, the media, the institution, everyone except yourself." Harry's composure finally snapped completely. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he screamed, his face now purple with rage. "You're just another bitter old woman who gets off on tearing people down because your own life is meaningless." The studio gasped collectively. Even Joy seemed momentarily stunned by the viciousness of his personal attack. But if Harry thought he'd gained the upper hand, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Joy's eyes narrowed to slits, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that was somehow more terrifying than her previous shouting. "Bitter old woman?" she repeated slowly, each word dripping with menace. "You pathetic little boy. I've been fighting real battles while you were playing dress-up in your palace. I've earned every gray hair on my head standing up to bullies and phonies. And you're both." The confrontation had now crossed into territory that neither of them could come back from. Harry was panting like a wild animal, his royal breeding completely forgotten as he glared hatred through the camera. Joy sat back in her chair with the satisfaction of a predator who had successfully cornered her prey. "Here's what's going to happen," Joy said, her voice now calm and controlled, which somehow made her words even more chilling. "You're going to hang up this call, run to your publicist, and try to spin this as another attack on your mental health. You'll probably write another chapter for your book about how the mean lady on TV was cruel to you." "I don't have to listen to this shit," Harry said through gritted teeth, his accent becoming more pronounced in his rage. "This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that drove us out of England in the first place." Joy laughed that harsh laugh again, the sound echoing through the stunned studio. "No, Harry. What drove you out of England was your inability to do your job without constantly complaining about it. And what's driving you to hang up this call is the same thing. You can't handle anyone challenging your carefully constructed narrative." The other co-hosts were now frantically trying to end the segment, making cutting motions to the producers, but Joy was in full predator mode and wasn't about to let her prey escape before she delivered the final, devastating blow that would end this confrontation once and for all. "You want to know what really bothers me about you, Harry?" Joy said, her voice taking on that deadly calm tone that veterans of The View knew meant someone was about to get completely destroyed. "It's not just the hypocrisy. It's not just the constant victim playing. It's the fact that you had everything handed to you and you pissed it all away because you couldn't handle a little criticism." Harry was now practically vibrating with rage, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. "I've heard enough of this garbage," he said through gritted teeth. "You're nothing but a washed-up comedian who peaked 20 years ago and now makes a living attacking people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world." Joy's eyes lit up with genuine delight at his desperate attempt to hurt her. "Oh, honey," she said with a patronizing smile that could cut glass, "if you think calling me washed up is going to hurt my feelings, you really don't understand who you're dealing with. I've been called worse things by better people than you'll ever be." The control room was in chaos, with producers screaming into headsets and technicians ready to cut the satellite feed. But somehow, the confrontation continued to unfold live on national television. Viewers across the country were glued to their screens, watching what would become one of the most talked-about moments in daytime television history. "But here's what really gets me," Joy continued, leaning forward with the intensity of a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. "You talk about making a difference, but what have you actually accomplished? Your brother William is out there working with the homeless, supporting mental health initiatives, preparing to be king. Your father, despite all his flaws, has spent decades championing environmental causes. Even your stepmother Camilla is out there supporting literacy programs and domestic violence survivors." Harry's face was now a mask of pure hatred, but Joy was just getting warmed up for her final assault. "And what have you done? You've written a book trashing your family, made a Netflix show where you complained about your privileged life, and started a foundation that seems to exist mainly to pay for your lifestyle. You're not changing the world, Harry. You're just monetizing your daddy issues." "That's it!" Harry exploded, his voice cracking with rage and humiliation. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this psychotic bitch tear apart everything I've worked for." The studio erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Even by The View's standards, this was unprecedented territory. But Joy just smiled wider, sensing that her prey was finally about to do exactly what she'd been pushing him toward all along. "Psychotic bitch?" Joy repeated, her voice dripping with mock hurt. "Oh, Harry, you're really showing your true colors now, aren't you? Is this how you talk to all the women who dare to challenge you? No wonder Meghan has to do all the talking in your interviews. You can't handle strong women, can you?" Harry was now beyond rational thought, his royal training completely abandoned as he devolved into pure, unfiltered rage. "Fuck you!" He screamed at the camera, spittle flying from his lips. "Fuck all of you. You're all just jealous, bitter people who can't stand to see someone trying to break free from a toxic system." Joy clapped her hands together in genuine delight, like a theater critic who had just witnessed a stunning performance. "There he is, everyone. The real Prince Harry, not the polished, media-trained victim we usually see, but an angry, entitled man-child who throws tantrums when people don't buy his carefully crafted sob story." "You know what?" Harry said, his voice now shaking with a mixture of rage and what sounded suspiciously like tears. I came on this show to talk about important issues, to try to make a positive impact, and instead I get ambushed by a has-been comedian who thinks she's some kind of moral authority." Joy's smile turned absolutely predatory. "Has-been? Honey, I'm still here, still working, still relevant after all these years. Where will you be in 5 years when people get tired of your victim routine? When the book deals dry up and Netflix moves on to the next royal scandal? What's your plan then, Harry?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Harry stared at the camera with the look of a man who had just realized he'd been completely outmaneuvered and humiliated on live television. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "I'll tell you what's going to happen," Joy continued, moving in for the kill with surgical precision. "You're going to hang up this call, and then you're going to call your publicist and try to figure out how to spin this disaster. You'll probably claim I was unfair, that this was an ambush, that it's more evidence of the toxic media environment that forced you to leave England. But deep down, you'll know the truth, that for once in your privileged life, someone didn't let you get away with your bullshit." Harry's face cycled through a dozen different emotions: rage, humiliation, desperation, and finally, a kind of defeated fury that was almost pitiable to watch. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the venom of years of entitlement finally being called to account. "You're a miserable, pathetic excuse for a human being," he said, his voice trembling with impotent rage, "and I hope you're proud of yourself for attacking someone who's trying to make the world a better place." Joy threw her head back and laughed. That genuine, delighted laugh that her fans knew meant she had achieved total victory. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "I'm not attacking you. I'm just holding up a mirror, and you don't like what you see." That was the final straw. Harry's image flickered on the screen as he reached for something off camera. "This is exactly the kind of toxic, poisonous behavior that destroyed my mother and nearly destroyed me," he said, his voice now breaking with emotion. "I will not subject myself or my family to this kind of abuse anymore." "And there it is," Joy said, pointing at the screen triumphantly. "When all else fails, bring up the dead mother again. It's like clockwork with you, isn't it, Harry?" Harry's face went completely white with rage, his eyes blazing with a fury that seemed to burn through the satellite connection. "Go to hell," he whispered, and then the screen went black. The studio sat in stunned silence for a moment, before Joy turned to the camera with a satisfied smile. "Well, folks, there you have it," she said, straightening her papers as if nothing unusual had happened. "Prince Harry, showing his true colors when faced with a little honest criticism. I guess when you've been coddled your whole life, the truth hits pretty hard." The other co-hosts sat in shock, unsure how to process what they had just witnessed. Joy had systematically dismantled one of the world's most famous figures on live television, and he had responded by having what could only be described as a complete public meltdown before storming off the show in disgrace. As the show cut to commercial, Joy leaned back in her chair with the satisfaction of a job well done. She had promised her viewers explosive television, and she had delivered in spades. Prince Harry, the man who had spent years crafting a carefully managed public image, had just shown the world exactly who he really was when pushed beyond his breaking point. And it wasn't pretty.